Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have Mr. Dr. Kelly Flanagan here. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Austin.
You got all those great books behind you, and we're going to start out a little different. We've never met. We got introduced through email, and on purpose, I almost don't engage with the people because I want it to be a surprise to me as it is to the guests when I interview, right? So I'm going to tell him a little story of how this is a full circle moment. Kind of interesting. So when I was 17, I got into a lot of trouble as a kid, and my parents said, look, you need to go to military school or you need to go to Beaumont. I said, well, I don't know where Beaumont is, but I'm in because it's not military school. Okay. So 3 months into that, my parents, who have never fought ever, come to me and say, we're getting a divorce. Okay. So I'm like, okay, wait. So then I classify in my own head that I was the reason they got divorced, okay? Which then introduces me to a crowd where I'm looking for acceptance, which then introduces me to cocaine, meth addiction, homelessness. Everybody knows this story on my podcast. 20 years, functioning alcoholic, all these bad things of all this, walk down. So I'm interviewing a guy I got introduced to. His name is Ken Wimberly. And we're talking about Ken's app that he did, and Ken and I are talking, and sometimes I'm very vulnerable on these podcasts, and we got into the story of my father. So my father, we basically didn't speak for 20 years, ever. Occasionally we went 7 years without speaking, all this stuff. And so after we got done with the podcast, Ken presses me even harder and says, Austin, I understand where you are mentally with your father, but as a father myself, I'm begging you to find something in your heart to try again. Just try again. This is all around the time that I find out my dad has cancer. Okay. So Ken says, in order for you to try again, you have to read this book. And so he sends me your book. But here's the problem. I didn't need to read the book to know what the book had inside of it. The title alone was enough to understand what he meant by sending it. So you, sir, didn't have to crack open. And just so we're clear, I only read your book this morning. That's the first time I've read it. Before
Is that
podcast.
right?
I swear to God.
Wow.
I never cracked it up, but I always put the title where I could see it. Because I've coached people for 6 years straight. And no matter what's going on with them, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. Do they love themselves?
That's right.
Okay. So Ken prods me. I'm in Costa Rica. I'm walking with my coach. It's 4:30 in the morning. We're walking in his neighborhood and right outside of San Jose. And it hits me. The reason I'm so scared to love my father is because we're the same damn person. Just wait, though. It gets so much more. So me and my fiance are traveling around the country, and we're supposed to go see my dad in Palm Springs where he lives. And we're literally supposed to see him for the first time. Like, I've seen him for an hour in 10 years. He calls me the day before wrecked. They got COVID. So I can't go see him. So we cancel the flights. I drive to Arizona. I'm driving through Arizona, and he calls me and says, look, I can't do this. He said, you're right here. He goes, I'll be better in 2 days. Where are you going to be? I said, I'm going to be in San Clemente, California. So they drive to go meet him, my stepmom. I am a consultant for small business owners, and I coach people. That's what I do. At that lunch, my dad, for 35 years, has been a consultant for small business owners
Uh-huh.
and all these things. We now talk every day. He sits on the board of my companies, and he's going to be here in 3 weeks, and we're going to play golf. And I just spent a week in his house in Houston. And I had to share that with you because the power of a title is so much even greater sometimes than the words that exist within a page. Now, that being said, the book is fucking amazing. That's a whole nother can of worms. Okay. But what I enjoyed the most in that book, and it reminded me of myself, was that you are not an author who claims to have it all figured out.
Right.
All those stories were about you and how you shortchange yourself. And that's what I appreciated the most. So I just wanted to start off the interview with how a title of a book can really spark something.
I'll share something with you. I don't think I've ever shared this anywhere else. And then I have a question for you. That the share is there was a lot of debate prior to the release of the book, because everywhere else on the internet, I'm Dr. Kelly Flanagan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone asked me recently, they said, there's no doctor on the cover of Lovable or any of your other books, right? And why is that? And I said, well, there was a debate, and ultimately we decided that if someone picked the book up because it was a doctor who wrote it, someone with some sort of earned authority that they were now going to teach us, they'd be pretty disappointed when they opened it up and read about this guy, right? Like, who's clearly been a mess and is sorting his own stuff out. And he's really essentially writing a book to his kids and to the little kid in him, reassuring all of them that they're lovable and they're worthy, and that has huge ramifications for their lives. So no Dr. Kelly on the cover, and I appreciate you noticing that that I don't have much interest in putting myself forward as an expert in that sense. Now my question is it possible to sort of succinctly describe the thing that you had to learn to love about you so that you could love your dad, that thing that you have in common that needed to happen for you first?
1,000%. I think ultimately understanding that there's a lot behind the story. There's a lot of pain that my dad held for me that mentally I wasn't prepared to handle until I was older. But if I look back at, one of my specialties is victimhood. I think victimhood is harder to get past than alcohol addiction, drug addiction, all that stuff like that.
Well,
because I needed, here's the way I'll describe it the best, because it's taken me many years to get here. The fuel I needed to get sober was to hate somebody.
Wow.
It was to hate myself, hate everybody that it involved. There was an anger. There was a visceral change in me that had to happen. I had to blow it all up. I had to be, my Valley cry during my getting sober was "Nobody cares, work harder," and people thought it was directed to them. It was directed towards me.
Sure.
I had to physically go to fucking war with myself and say, "Is this what you want?" Now, here's what sucks. Is that you do all that change, and what happened to me about 1.5 years ago is you keep reaching down in the barrel of toxic gas to move forward. It's not there anymore.
That's right.
You have to say, oh, maybe I can actually be happy and live a life.
That's so good, man. It's so true. I think there's so many people probably listening right now who can relate to that and go, oh yeah, I use my anger, I use my FU, I use my, all of that stuff as fuel, but most of us can relate to that fuel running out, or
it's not
self-imploding on itself, blowing up.
That's a sprint fuel.
That's right.
To get you to the next level. It's not going to take you to where you need to go. And what I realized when we started buying companies, and I'm managing multiple people, I now have 44 people that I'm in charge of. If I'm using that, then they're seeing that as a bridge to what they can use. But when I say, hey, dude, we must have had 17 things that happened wrong this morning. And here I am, my guys are they're so upset, they're pissed off, they're yelling at each other, and I'm just laughing my butt off, lightening the mood, right? But it's taken me so long to get that. But the problem is I recover and I'm in
Mm.
recovery for almost 4.5 years now, but I no longer identify with that at all. I'm
Right. That's
recovered.
right. Man, so at a recent Front Row Dads retreat with Matt Drinkon, who connected us,
Mhm.
he one of my friends was there, Mike Wagner, founder of a company called Storage Rebellion. He said something that sort of earned him the MVP vote for the retreat from everyone. And I asked him, we actually ran into each other in the airport on the way to the Front Row Dads retreat, and the man was on fire, like on fire in like that not driven way, but in that peaceful way. And I said to him, which has its own drive. I don't mean to imply that it's static, but I asked him, dude, what are you doing? And he said, I'm doing everything I've ever done, except I'm doing it now because I love myself instead of trying to fix myself. Right. And boom, right there. So that's the shift that you're describing, is that it's not it's a shift from I'm fixing myself, I'm disliking myself, I'm trying to get away from who I am, to I love who
Yes.
I am, and now I'm doing all those
It's the
things with an
absence. It's
entirely
the
different
absence
energy.
of the run.
That's right. Yeah.
But here's the problem,
Yes.
though. When you don't have the run, then you have to sit with yourself.
You gotta be
And
with yourself. That's right.
you know,
That's
and
not
I
the
could
fun part. That's not
no,
the
it's
fun
not. It's not the fun part. And let it be known, like every day. You know, I have an amazing fiance now, but you know, I had a 13-year marriage that didn't serve me. You know, at the end there for the last 6 years, and I met her a month after leaving my wife, and she knows, and I know both. I still got a lot of work to do, right?
There's a lot of work to do.
When it comes to that, but you have to be willing, right? I have a friend, a good friend, who's a male coach, and some of these guys that are men's coaches in the fitness space are just savages. I mean, these guys, I don't understand what they do. But for like 3 weeks, he on purpose didn't work out, and he stood in the mirror and looked at himself for 10 minutes, and he said the words that were going through my head were the nastiest stuff. He goes, I would not repeat these words to anybody. And what he realized is that he was working out for his followers. He wasn't working out for himself.
There it is. It's such a great, just a metaphor. We all have to have those 3 weeks right in the middle of our story somewhere, where we quit doing all the things that we do to not slow down and not pay attention and not connect with ourselves. And then we have to go through that initial, not forever, but that initial pain point of seeing all the stuff that's going on in there that's driving the running, right? And wow, what a beautiful example of that. You did it. He did it in a powerful way. I think that's what I talk about essentially in Lovable, is the time in my life when I went through that and still have to go through that sometimes. There's always a revisiting of that. But one of the things I love about coaching entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs know what's got you this far can't take you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Right. So there's just that awareness, and it's such an essential piece of the journey, is to know that all that drive, all that energy, all that fight, all that hatred, all of it that got me this far, it's not gonna be able to take me the rest of the way. I got to find something else. And sometimes that's motivation enough to slow down.
Well, it's interesting, right? And I realized it last week. We closed a deal and we bought, it's a long story. It doesn't even give the whole thing, but we closed on a business that a guy retired, and we got a great ROI on his phone number, the customer list, his tools, all this stuff, right? Great ROI. I worked on it for like 2 hours. It came to me from one of our sales guys, bam, boom, boom. We did it. They're happy. I'm happy. Everything's great. And I realized that I'm at a different time and space in my career, but also in my life, that I have to identify with decisions as work, not work being work. I'm paid to be president and CEO and make the big decision that's going to yield us the highest ROI, but I might do nothing the rest of the week.
Right. Yes. You're
Now, who does that mess with? It messes with me.
Right. Because our worth is predicated upon how much am I visibly producing so that everybody else can sort of say, oh, that's his value.
Yeah.
That's his value. See what he's doing. I know, like, to have to sort of source that value from within and know that the decision is valuable enough. Like, that is a hard transition to make.
Because it's not, what I found over the time, especially being sober, is it's not what I ask people to do is 2 things when they change careers. The joke with me is, if you coach with me, 3 things are going to happen. 1, not on purpose, you're going to get divorced. you're going to move to Europe, or you're going to leave your job. It's as simple as that. And I'll tell it to you on the first session, right? But what I need you to do in the midst of that is create an anchor point to accept and be ready that you're going to have to identify with your new identity long before your actions and your feelings are going to take up, because it's the identity that we lose within that space. Getting sober is not hard, but not being identified as the drunk friend anymore, that's the problem.
That's the problem. What's the identity that we're holding on to? Because it's all we know ourselves to be. We're nobody without it.
Dude, go hang out with your high school buddies that you drink every day with, and you haven't seen them in 3 years, and you don't drink anymore. It's not just weird for me. It's super weird for them.
It's not just, that's right. You're not the most uncomfortable one there.
No, they were like, who are you? You lost 70 pounds and you don't drink anymore and you're sitting in the corner. This is really weird for us. Please. Because then it makes them look at a mirror into themselves.
Yeah, that is one of the concepts in Lovable that I talk about, is when we are starting to live into our sense of worthiness, you will lose places of belonging. You will lose circles of belonging, because it's going to lead to changes that's going to ask everyone else to sort of look at themselves as well. And if they're not ready to live into that worthiness and start to make some of those identity shifts, it's gonna be really uncomfortable, as you point out. And so, there's a pruning that happens at first as we enter into that worthiness, before our circles of belonging begin to expand again.
One of my favorite quotes is, stop watering the plant next to you long enough to see if it's a weed or a plant.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. That's really
It's the
good.
truth, right? Because one of the things my fiance's taught me more than anything is a simple lesson, but it's the biggest lesson in the world. And I hope it lands for you, because it's so ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it makes so much sense. She taught me that rain is great too.
That's so good. And by rain, you mean,
so hear me out. She's from Seattle. I'm from Texas. Dude, I love the sun, baby. I'm a front runner. I love the sun. I'm with her. We're on the West Coast. I'm all jazzed up to have a great day with her. We're hiking and it's raining outside, and she goes, wow, what a beautiful day.
I was asked recently in an interview, like, what is peace? When you say peacefulness, peace, what is it? And the answer that came to mind was, peace is not resisting any of the human experience, right? And so we have, to your point, we have experiences that we categorize as good and desirable, sunny days, Texas weather, these sorts of things. And then experiences we categorize as undesirable, rainy days, cold weather, sadness, hardship, pain, all of these things. And what we do is our ego attaches to wanting the stuff we decided is good, and it spends its life resisting the things that we've decided are bad. But if we in resistance to what we think is bad is the definition of suffering. If we can no longer resist those things, but we can welcome them in, not have to resist them, not have to avoid them, all of a sudden we can be at peace in any situation, because it's not contrary to what we're wanting for right now. We're simply being present to it. We're living it, and we're figuring out who we are in the midst of this thing, right? And so the concept of rain is good too. I love it. I think it gets to something really profound.
What is the true, in your eyes, what is the difference between worthiness and love?
So I think of love as an action, and an action that naturally flows from the recognition of worthiness in something.
Okay.
So if we can recognize the worthiness in ourselves, then love will be the natural action of loving ourselves. Now, people said, so how do you know if you've really connected with your sense of worthiness? And I said, there's always one hallmark. Everyone else is equally as worthy as you. They may not be able to see it. They may not be living into their worthiness, but you can see through all of the mess.
Yes.
and you can see the worthiness in them. So suddenly love becomes not just love for my own worthiness, but I love the worthiness in each person that I'm running into as well. It sort of flows like the action.
Because we're having, we're in the HVAC, plumbing, electric, construction space, right?
Mhm.
And among my other stuff. And, obviously, the narrative out there, there's nowhere to hire. There's no good people,
Right.
you hear from everybody, right? Well, what
Mhm.
I've been doing, this is an interesting tactic. And we went from 18 to 44 in 100 days. No ads, no nothing. I
Whoa.
hired them myself. My specialty is talent. I can source, find,
Yeah.
polish off the things. What I've been doing is I've been finding the people that aren't qualified for the job, telling them directly to their face, they're not qualified, but I believe in you. And they're knocking it out of the park every time, because I can teach everything else. What I can't teach is wanting to get after it, smarts, and loyalty. Everything else I can
Right
teach.
on, man. Right on. And so in that capacity to see the worthiness in yourself is the foundation of the capacity to see it in other people, right? So here you are able to see what other people are capable of because you first done the work on yourself, whereas everyone else is missing it. They're not seeing it. They're looking at a resume and going, not qualified enough. And you can sort of see past those credentials and right into what they're capable of. I think that's beautiful. It's a great way to that book, Who Not How, right?
Man, that's
that has
it.
gone.
That's it.
That's it.
I've read all of Dan Sullivan's books. It's I think that we can apply who not how into our own life, meaning for ourselves, right? And I think that the number one issue that entrepreneurs have is they talk about everything that they're going to do. I think we need to start from the standing point of identifying what we won't do.
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
Say more about that.
My whole life was predicated on one thing and one thing only. Can I do my job from this computer? And does it matter where this computer is? I heard it on a real estate call 5 years ago. What's your number one goal? I want to be location independent. And I was like, ooh, bam, that's it. Okay. And so what I did is I built my whole life based on a lifestyle, not on a business or my talents. Right. Sure. And what is so messed up, and I probably do an entire book on this, is everything. I got kicked out of 3 kindergartens. I made straight A's without studying. I have a clinical photographic memory. I can recall this conversation, you and I's conversation 6 months from now on the golf course.
Right.
Easy. Right. Done 800 podcasts. I can pull it up. I know what everybody does, where they live, what their kids are named. That's my memory. But everything that I was shit on, and I'm using language on purpose, everything that I was talked down on, that people looked down on me, they were mad at me. Everybody in my life, the guidance counselor, the schools, my parents at the time, they all champion me for now.
That's right. That's so
man,
good.
You can talk to anybody. Yes. Man, you can network like anybody. Whoa, you have a great personality. Whoa, you bring the energy. Those were all things that they tried to put me in a damn box since I was 1 year old.
Well, it's very inconvenient when you're 3 years old and you're demonstrating the qualities of an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
and this comes up all the time.
God bless mother and dad. Yeah.
That's right.
I did. True story. Because I know I'm going to send this to him afterwards. So my dad was the number one dentist in all of Texas for years, like 40 plus years, right? Okay. Sold his practice 2 years ago. Once I started running this small business, this business, I called him the first day and I said, hey man, you were out of your mind. I was like, the fact that you did this for 48 years, I have so much respect through the ups and downs of the economies and the employees and the customers. God bless you. I'm 100 days in, and I'm like, I have a whole new level of respect, and I think that we lose the humanity in parents, kid to parent relationship, right?
Absolutely.
Meaning that the parent doesn't have like any room for anything, doesn't have anything, right? Doesn't have anything, can't grow, always has to say the right thing,
So my 15-year-old, our oldest is 19. He's out of the house now. He's He told us when he was in 8th grade, by the way, that he was not planning to go to college. He was going to become a world famous stand-up comedian. And he's now 19, living in Chicago, attending Second City and chasing his
Oh my
dream,
God, look at this guy.
fully supporting himself. Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. My 15-year-old the other day, he's just short of his driver's license, which is like I think 15 is the worst age,
Yeah,
right?
15 is
Because
the worst,
you
yeah.
feel like you should have all the control and freedom, but no one will give you that driver's license yet, you know? And anyways, was asking him to sort of participate in the family life. Hey, can you garbage, can you get out and water that garden? I mean, all these things. Is grumble, and like resist. And then, an hour later he comes to me and he says, "Hey Dad, can you give me a ride to the Y?" And it was out of my mouth before I could even think about it. I go, "Dude, I love you unconditionally, but I don't drive you unconditionally." Like the reactions I got from you over the last hour, like they don't make me want to drive you. And in a sense, that was an impulsive reaction on my part, but it was also an awareness that I'm coming to at this point of parenthood that, it's a mistake to disappear as a self, as a parent.
Yes.
That this is like home, family is the training ground for learning to be in companionship and in community and in collaboration. And if we disappear as selves, if we don't have sort of a human sort of identity that we're inhabiting with our kids, then we're just making it too easy on them to skate through life without learning how to be in relationship. And so these days, like I love you totally, but relationships are, there's a mutuality to them and a reciprocality, and I need you engaging in that. So that's anyways, that came to mind when you shared that about parents and humanizing our parents, right?
So I have two concepts for you. One, I think could be relatable in your book, and I've never publicly shared it to anybody. There's only one other person that knows what happened to me. He was a coach in the younger group I was in, GoBundance, said it to me, and like I literally had to leave work because it was such a aha moment for me. What I realized during the journey of trying to heal with my father wound and my relationship with my father, any man, meaning you, we could have met 7 years ago, any mentor I had, they were on a false pedestal of expectations and unknowing to themselves. And I would beg them to let me down so I could continue to feed my victimhood. And that was my rinse and repeat my entire life.
Man, how, if we are not digging into those wounds and how they're continuing to linger with us and how we're continuing to play out those habits, how are we ever going to get conscious and unstuck, right? And the first line of my new novel is, the past is behind us, but it's also always within us. And if we're not aware of that reality, that those past wounds and the patterns that sort of coping that resulted from it, if we're not aware that those are continuing to influence on a day-to-day, even moment-to-moment basis, then we're really not free, are we? We are sort of a slave to what we're not paying attention to there.
And there was a guy, and I'll be honest with you, he's kind of a jerk, but God bless the jerk, right? Because I don't know I don't know if he skates between jerk and kind of great. It's a thin line, so it's all relative. But
it can be a thin line.
He said to me, he said, "Hey man, like all this is great. Like I get it. These people offended you and hurt you, and you're upset about them. That's cool. I get that. But not once in 3 months have I heard you take any ownership of anything." He goes, "Wake the fuck up, dude." He goes, "Read this book and shut the fuck up." And that book was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Oh, awesome. Man, and you read it?
Yes, I listened to it.
Yeah. I listened to it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I would say, among many other things, it was a catalyst to my sobriety. Because like I said in the beginning, victimhood is almost impossible. I call it bunker therapy.
Man, your willingness to sort of to stay in that and hear that and follow up on that feedback. I mean, I think there comes this moment where what we want to pay attention to is the moments where someone gives us the feedback we least want to hear. right? And I don't know exactly what that feedback means for us, but if we least want to hear it, it means something really important. And it's really important for us to slow down around that, and dig into that and discover what that might have for us. And you were willing to do that in that moment. A lot of us, man, it's just full guns blazing right back.
Do you want to know how I used to introduce myself to networking events?
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah.
Dead serious. I used to go, hey, former meth addict, homeless, divorced. Nice to meet you. My name's Austin Linney. Because I realized if it didn't know me anymore, then it would allow that person to open up and share some of their stuff. And I just dropped that into
Right. Like if you continue to move forward with even a modicum of shame about any of that, feeling like you need to hide it.
I gotta go read your chapter. I gotta go read your chapter again on shame, because it made me realize that shame, external, internal, but also fictional shame is, I would say, the root of 90% of everything.
That's right. I agree with you. Like that was the fundamental turning.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like if shame is the message that you are not good enough exactly the way you are to be loved and to belong.
Only one.
Then it is
You're the only one.
Yeah.
Dude, my favorite thing, the client goes, I go, who's telling you this? Who's saying this to you? Talk to me. Tell me. Then record them if they're saying it.
Yes.
No, they're not saying it. And then when you drill down, it's all relative. You know, two things that changed my life when it comes to podcasting. I can't control what you hear. All I can control is what I say, but also I can't control when you hear it, but I can control when I say it.
That's right.
One of the scariest things for me, especially in coaching, is to be effed over by clients, but still know 2 years later that my message hit them. And so my producer sent me a video, because he produces his podcast as well, a guy that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
It owes me tons of money. And he said, Austin, I want to ask you a question. This was 5 a.m. He lives in Spain. I live here. So I got the message at 5 a.m. when I'm walking. He said, let me ask you a question. When I met you, you told me that your number one why in life is to impact all in every way, in every moment. That's what you said to me. He said, that's the case. Then who gives a shit what happened? Listen to this. And I listened to it and I lost my mind.
What you're getting, I love what you said. I can only control what I say and when I say it. I can't control how other people receive it, when they receive it. You know, one of the soul sucking and energy draining realities of living in shame and the belief that we're not good enough is that we are constantly trying to control and manage the impression we're making on other people to just sort of improve our standing a little bit more. So we're always trying to control what's going on in another person's experience of us, which, number one, like, it's a non-winning proposition. Can't do it. Number two, there's a ton of energy going into those efforts to control what everybody thinks of us. And when we can take that energy back, pour it into loving ourselves and loving them no matter what they think of us, then we're free. Smallest example of this, I was called out on this at a Affirmative Dads retreat last October, that when my daughter gets home from school and I start peppering her with questions, she's 13 now. Hey, how did school go? What did you guys do? Who'd you sit with at lunch? Would you guys play at recess? You know, that part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to get her to understand, to know that I am an interested father. I want her to know that her dad was interested. I'm trying to put into her head the thought, my dad was really interested in me, right? And so no wonder that my 13-year-old shuts down.
It's so ridiculous.
It's so sick. And so no wonder she shuts down when I start asking her questions about school. She's like, no, like, I'm not playing this game, where you're controlling, and no, not interested. And so I came home from that retreat, having to again sit in my worthiness as a dad and know that there are times when I am a very interested dad, and there's times when I screw that up and I get really distracted. And in both cases, I'm lovable. But I've got to come home, sit in that worthiness. And when she gets home from school, just ask, is there anything you want to share with me about school today? And when I can give her that freedom, right, to be in control of what she shares or what she doesn't, ironically, more often than not, she shares a lot more.
So something just hit me. And I guarantee you, when I say this, you're going to understand what I'm talking about, because I just thought about you writing all these amazing books and then screwing that up and getting called out. So I'm the mindset coach guy, and I'll go on the golf course with like 8 other entrepreneurs, and then I'll lose my shit. And they're like, well, you don't look like you're constructing your life now, do you? And I'm like, oh, so I secretly made the most insane accountability of my entire life,
That is hilarious. And this is the alcoholic's mindset. Golf course doesn't count. I don't think it should count for anybody. Like, no one should be judged based upon their behavior on the golf course, right? So that's funny because Caitlin, my daughter, and I, we each joined just the two of us joined a golf club this year. She asked to do it. Figure it's something that she and I can do together, have a daddy-daughter thing. I'm so conscious. It's such an interesting, right? Because you're in your head going, this is how I would normally behave on a golf course when I play like that. And this is the way I want my daughter to understand. I mean, she's literally learning lessons about a person's your worthiness right now. Am I angry at myself and angry at life because a little tiny white ball didn't go exactly where I wanted it to? My goodness, is that the lesson that I want to send her?
I would say the moments. And where do you live?
We live west of Chicago, about 75 miles, tiny little town.
Perfect. 2 of my business partners probably live in your same neighborhood. So
nice.
When you go play, this is really, I know you know what I'm going to talk about. There's something to be said when you go play a course that's so ridiculously nice that it doesn't matter how bad you're playing because it's so damn beautiful. Like I went and played Banded Dunes on the Oregon coast. It was 80 degrees and sunny. I was with the whole family and a caddy. I don't even think I swung a club on the last 3 holes because we were walking in the ocean and I was like, they're like, do you want to play? And I'm like, no, I'm just taking it in.
That's right. Yeah. Well, who was it that said golf is a good walk spoiled? In that case, like it was, the setting was nice enough. It didn't spoil the walk. But yeah, I mean, no, we could talk, I could talk golf all day. It's one of my passions.
And so, what I find, and this is relatable to what you've been sharing, what I find the hardest thing that I've been talking to my friends about, a lot of my friends have very stressful jobs. We're talking about a guy who manages 5 billion, another one who, lends 100 billion, and they've been working from home and they have young kids. And here they are yelling at their, COO in Ukraine, and then the moment they walk out and the kids around their ankles and there's no separation. They used to have that drive home, right? What is your advice to parents? Me as well, dude. I am. So my work is 24/7, meaning like I can do it on Sunday. I can do it on Saturday. So like, there's no separation. I'm in my office right now. That's at home. I have a real hard time flipping it, like delineating differences, right? As an entrepreneur, you're on.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, and I'll say the other side of that is, I'm going to get this from my family because I just in the last year started working fully from home for the first time, closed my brick and mortar therapy practice and shifted to online coaching. And their sentiment is, geez, you work all the time. You're always neglecting us. And I'm like, I'm working half the hours I used to. It's just that every single one of those hours, you feel like I'm in another room ignoring you. Whereas in the past, dad was just off at work, no big deal. He's earning for the family, right? So the work at home thing is a real struggle, and it's a struggle on both ends. For us to not have a buffer between work life and home life. I have a couple thoughts. Let's set the goal of showing up to that call with the COO over in the Ukraine and with the exact same energy we want to show up to our kids with. Let's do that so that the gap that we have to close between the end of the workday and walking up the stairs or whatever isn't that huge, number one. Number two, if you need a little bit of time to close that gap, I've started to do this. I commute by going for a walk around the block or 2. So build in a commute of some sort, and probably in both directions, to be honest with you. A little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon. Because give yourself the space to close that.
And this is one of my things with, and you Front Row Dad, by the way, just so we're clear, Front Row Dads, and I'll just say this because Mike Higgins is a good friend of mine. Front Row Dads is the greatest group that exists on the planet. And the moment that I start having a baby and we find out we're pregnant, I'm in. Okay. The moment I'm in. Okay. Front row expecting dad. I'll be in that group. So just amazing human beings, everybody I met. One of the things that I heard the other day, and this is something I drill into my clients, you're two things. One, you think that all the success that you need is you put it back on your family and your kids. Okay. Bullshit. It's because you and for you alone, in the moment that you accept that,
that's huge.
Okay, bam. Second thing is you're acting like they want 3 months off, no cell phone, no work. They're asking for 45 minutes. Pull it together, bro. Yeah.
That's it. The first piece of what you just said is not said enough. We hear it all the time. I hear it in my own head, but I did all this for you today. I did all this for the family. I'm providing for the family. And the reality is, if we deleted all of them, we'd still do the same thing. We're still driven for, just such an important observation you make there. And if we can own that, then all of a sudden we don't feel like the family owes us something at the end of the day because we were just out doing this for them. Now it's time to pour into them as well. And like you said, 30-45 minutes of quality attention goes a long way.
Dude, my fiance would beg me to go to work because she's like, you're a nightmare when you're off for a couple of days.
That's right. Now what I will say is, you give your family, you give your kids in particular 30 to 45 minutes of quality attention, and it won't be enough. Because if they get 30 to 45 minutes of quality attention from a parent, they're going to want more. That feels great. That feels really good, 100%. Right? Yeah. And so how often do we conclude our really intentional hour of time with our kids by getting frustrated that they want even more? like we're not good enough now because they want more of us. And it's the other way around. It's like, no, dude, they want you around more because that was really good. You did great. So affirm that for both of you.
So something I want to share with you, and you were talking about how I take feedback. So I've only heard it one other time. It was a guy from $1 Million Listing, funny enough, on a Gary Vee podcast who said it. And I almost fell out of my chair because it was how I lived my entire life, but I never heard anybody else describe it. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. One of the greatest things, bad partnership, good partnership, lose money, win money, don't matter. The number one thing that any business partner, anybody that works for me says, will give you feedback, and at 7 a.m. the next morning is fixed. Like, boom, it's done. So the way I live my life is, as you and I are having this conversation, my soul and my consciousness is standing right next to me. I'm correcting in the moment, going, and what my fiance's had to teach people is, he's not listening. He's a bartender for 20 years. He sold wine. He hears everything.
Right.
But I'm always correcting. And yes, I could work on being more present. I'm fully aware of that. But if you tell me at 9 o'clock, hey, you tell me at 9 p.m. at night, I didn't like that. When I show up the next day at 8 a.m., that's gone.
Yeah. One of the ways that I couch that is, my brain is excellent at problem solving. I love problem solving. I think my true self is a good problem solver. And so when someone says something to me, a to-do list populates in my head. I go, ooh, I can solve that and that and that and that for them. And so what's interesting is that I got really defensive for a long time about the way I would get distracted in conversation, or I'd lose presence, or someone would say, you're not really here. And so my wife would call me out on that. I get defensive. I'm so present. I'm so dialed in. It took me owning the fact that that's the way my brain works for me to express it and be vulnerable about that with her. And so now, like, she'll start to say something. She'll go, I don't want to create a to-do list for you until tomorrow. And she won't. Let's talk about that first thing tomorrow morning. It's pretty cool. And then sometimes though, she'll use it to her benefit. She wants something. Of course. So she'll be like, yeah, I just wish this was this way. Yeah. And then she just walks out of the room. And
no. Look, there's nothing, and you, there's nothing greater than understanding that the woman in your life, right? I've done 800 podcasts. I've spoken on stage a few times. I'm running, $1 million business. Means jack shit to my fiance.
Exactly.
The moment we got together, she stopped listening to podcasts. Nothing, like, I just beforehand, I was the guy that motivated her, but now it's like, I'm not that impressed. You need,
that's right.
You need that humbleness in your life, right? You need it,
who was that? I think it was Bruce Springsteen was being interviewed by Howard Stern, and Howard Stern like it's like, man, your kids, do they just love to come to your shows? And Bruce Springsteen goes, oh, kids? He says they'll come watch 50,000 people boo you or criticize you. They don't want to see 50, And he said kids they gotta go find their own heroes. Their dad doesn't have to be it,
That's so
And I think
true.
that's the reality. Like when people live with you 24/7, you're just not going to spend much time on a pedestal, right?
No,
That's gonna
1000%.
you're gonna be-
And nor would
yeah.
I, because one of the
Right.
things that I promised myself I wouldn't do, and it's very hard too,
Mhm.
is I promised I would not be my fiance's coach or problem solver.
That's good. Yeah.
I'm not saying it was the reason I got divorced in the first place, but it sure as hell didn't help.
Well, let me tell you about the first 10 years of my marriage, because I'm, clinical psychology PhD, specializing in marital conflict. Can you imagine what I was like to live with being married to me?
Your nightmare.
A nightmare.
What do you mean by that? And she's like, shut
Yeah, and I
up.
just
Yeah.
I just told myself that if I just stayed calm in conflict, then I was the winner.
Oh,
I was
that's
doing
even
it better.
worse. That's even worse.
It's worse. It's worse. It's so condescending. Not to
Yeah.
mention the fact that my wife she's a spark plug. She's a fighter. Like if you're staying calm, she thinks you don't care.
No.
And, and all
Well,
of a sudden, no.
I told you that my
Yeah.
fiance taught me that rain's beautiful. The number one thing she also taught me is that we can fight and still be in love.
That's right. That's right.
I never knew that in my
Yeah.
entire life. It was we
so
fight,
good.
I disappear. And she's like, look, I'm being 100%, she's half Mexican. I'm being 100% serious.
Yeah.
I love you, but I want to punch you in the throat right now. And she's like,
That's
but
right.
know that down there, I still love you, but this doesn't
Yes.
work for me. And like, man,
There's a tipping point. I tell this to couples all the time. There's a tipping point in marriage when the biggest truth about the relationship isn't the fight you're in, but that you'll get through it and be closer as a result.
Ooh,
Like
and that's scary because then I have to be,
Mhm.
then she, like, here's what people don't understand. And I'll tell her right to her face. She loves me so much, it scares the shit out of me. Like I've never been loved like that ever.
Wow.
Right? Like I've never been
Yes.
loved like that. My mom was hardcore. My ex-wife was
Yeah.
hardcore. And like
Yeah.
when I got separated from them, I went, this is a true story, dead serious. Got separated from my wife, my ex-wife. We had 30 or 45 days where we weren't talking. I got in the car to drive to Austin and I drove to California instead. This is a true story. Swear to God. So for 45 days, I visited my friends in Malibu. I was in Joshua Tree. And here's a true story. I swear to God, this is 100% true. For 35 days straight, I didn't run into another male. And I randomly ran into like 7 different women and hung out with them. It was the craziest thing in the world, healing my mother wound. And everybody asked me, they said, who are you traveling with? And I said, dude, I met this badass motherfucker. He's sitting right next to me. And his name's Austin Linney. And I can't wait to get to know him.
I love it. That's awesome. I love it.
It's the truth, right? When's
when
the
you
last
said-
time? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you said she loves me so much it scares me, and what made me think of is like we have our little go-to tricks in relationships that will push 99% of people away when it feels like they're getting too close, right? Too close to that stuff that we're not real confident about or we're still ashamed of. She loves you too much to get pushed away. So she's gonna keep on coming.
but hey, just so we're clear, same for me. When we first got together, crazy childhood, never had a mom or dad, raised by our grandmother, the whole nine. She was fighting me away, and I'm going, yeah, it's not working for me. And I would just be like, I'm not going to address this, right? But I've done enough work to know that's not directed towards me; it's directed towards trial, right? Because I think that reading your book this morning or listening to it while I was walking, I thought to myself this one thought, and I had a friend tell me this 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly the phrase he used, but he said that if you can spend your life walking around looking at everybody directly across from you and know that you're nearly just talking to their little child self, then you can have peace in your heart.
Right on. Absolutely. And the piece that I would add to that is if when they're acting like that jerk, you can know that they're just protecting the little child inside of them. then,
right
game
before this
changer.
interview, Mel Robbins was interviewing. I saw this clip. I sent it to like 10 people because she said that there's this lady at my book signing who had a bad attitude. And she goes, well, she doesn't have a bad attitude. That's just despair. And Mel goes, hold on, what? And she goes, oh, she's not actually a mean person. She's just fighting for her life.
Wow, so good. There's a story I share in Lovable, a little anecdote told by a guy named Peter Rollins about this Texas oilman who discovers he's got a long lost cousin, Seamus, over in Ireland. He wants to go get to know him, so he goes over there, and Seamus is showing him around his humble little property in Ireland. And the Texan says, "Oh, you should see my property in Texas. I can't even drive my car to the edges of it." And Seamus looks at him and says, "My car's broken too." And like, I can't tell you how many times a day when somebody shows up with all of their bluster and ego, I just think my car's broken too.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
it's just that little kid underneath.
See, this is interesting that we're having this conversation. That was my entire makeup and personality for my entire life. It was let the rhino, they call me the rhino, let the rhino be loud, boisterous, run over 90% of the people until a coffee shop in San Antonio, Texas on a Thursday, when I ran into my friend accidentally, and we were supposed to meet for 2 minutes, and we talked for 3 hours. I cried 16 times, and she said, "Let me ask you a question." And these are her exact words. She goes, "Austin, there is no chance that there's a part of me that doesn't believe that you will be successful." She goes, "I know that. I know it. I see it in your intention. But I'm letting you know right now, when you're on top of that mountain, who's going to be there to support you?"
Right.
She goes, "You're nothing more than a bloody knuckle climber."
Whoa. You've had some people who have been willing to tell you the truth.
And I, because I'm willing to tell them the truth.
Well, I was going to say, and I think people know when someone's ready to hear it or willing to receive it.
We just talked for an hour. That's the most important statement that you said ever. When they're willing to hear it, not when you want to say it.
Can you show up to your life with the energy that lets people know you're willing to hear the hard things so you can actually get the essential feedback you need to keep growing? Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, once again, you said it again, willing to show up. Willing to show up, right? Yeah. Willing to show up. Because here's what's crazy, right? Is that when you get sober, this is one of my good friends I interviewed, he's beaten cancer twice. And my joke with him on the podcast, they gave him a 3% chance to live. On the podcast, I said, well, when you beat it, I said, they just put $1 million in your bank. They were riding, you had a parade down the street. He goes, no, I had ass loads of fucking medical bills and all this shit. You know what's fucked up? And I'll say this, and maybe I'll send it to him, maybe I won't. He fucked me over big time. Biggest fuck over my entire life. But what I realize right now in this exact moment is he was just fighting for his life.
He was just fighting for his life. That's right. That's right.
And I finally just forgave him.
It's beautiful.
Still upset, but forgave him.
Well, forgiveness is definitely an iterative thing, right? There's that wisdom.
We'll let it touch like a couple months from now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's when the hurt wells up again, you got to forgive it all over again. So yeah, that's right.
So if people want to read your books, they want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Yeah. drkellyflanagan.com is my website, drkellyflanagan.com. If they want to find directly Lovable, you can go to lovableTheBook.com, lovableTheBook.com. My new novel is out now. It is essentially lovable in fiction form. And so it's called The Unhiding of Elijah Campbell. You can go to unhidingbook.com. Right now, I'm writing my next nonfiction book, what I would consider the closest thing to a sequel to Lovable. I'm writing it as a serial on Substack, and people can read it for free. And that's at drkellyflanagan.substack.com. So if anyone can keep track of all those URLs, they're better people than me.
I knew it was going to be good. It was better than I thought. I'm very excited to come to your neck of the woods and take you to lunch at some point.
I'd love to do that, man.
So one of my greatest quotes, first of all, my favorite quote that I think you'll resonate with is John Bernard Shaw, 1934 poet. He said the single greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place.
Ooh, he's good, isn't he?
I use it
Yeah.
like 24/7. Okay.
The illusion
But
is
what
taken
I say to you is John Maxwell says, and I've read all John Maxwell books. He said the number one issue with writing a book is the moment that you put the words in writing, that your viewpoint on the words change. So it's hard. You have to let go. But
right
what
on.
I say to you is if you never decided to put pen to paper, then this conversation might have never happened.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Thank you for the way that you showed up to this conversation. I mean, it made it truly a delight for me to talk today. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. If you got some value from this, send it to a friend, and we'll see you next time.